I'm glad to be here with you guys. I'm at home, just like most of you. And in fact, in my case, I started a little earlier than most of you because I traveled to Uganda and I came back on the day they said everyone who's just come back has to self-quarantine. And then a few days later, they said everyone has to go home and close universities. So I've been at home for more than a month now. But it's not a big deal for me because I've always been paperless, at least for the past 7 years. So working from anywhere is a familiar thing for me. And now actually being allowed to do it without anyone raising an eyebrow is fantastic. So I'm enjoying the flexibility. But I realize that it's not the same for everyone. Not everyone is enjoying this thing of working from home or having been disrupted. And in fact, a lot of people are suffering. People don't have their regular income. They're worried about losing their jobs. They're worried about getting this disease and what might happen. If they fall sick, will they be treated? So a lot of people are worried. So it's not an easy time for everyone, as it is for some of us who find this like a new, interesting way of living our lives. So when Eric came to me and Christina as well and asked me to speak with alumni, I just thought maybe I could try and give you a different perspective of what's happening right now so that it's not all just a negative story. And I'm inspired by a particular event that occurred in the 1930s. So if the host allows me to share the screen, I'll show you a picture that right now it's not allowing me to show you. So you all know that Strathmore was inspired by Saint Josemaria. So this is a Spanish priest who started an organization called Opus Dei. And I'm going to show you just now something in the history of his life that inspired me. So what you see there is a very young version, a very young, Saint Josemaria back in the 1930s. And that drawing you see next to him is a drawing that one of the people he was staying with, holed up with actually in the embassy of Honduras in Madrid, drew. This is the room, the tiny room that they lived in during the Spanish Civil War when they had to hide. In fact, you can see that he's not dressed as a priest, he's dressed as a layman because he's got a bit of, he had to basically pass undetected, otherwise he would get killed for operating as a priest. So they managed to hide in the embassy of Honduras because of the diplomatic immunity that embassies had back in the day. And they didn't know how long this particular stay was going to be. All they knew is they couldn't get out of there. If they got out, they could be killed, they could be arrested. But they were holed up in this place, getting very little food, not knowing how long this situation would last. And that's pretty much what you guys are experiencing right now, what all of us are experiencing. We're at home. We have no idea when this COVID business is going to end, whether it'll be another 30 days, 60 days. I was with some folks today who are considering a 360-day scenario, which is crazy to be just at home for 360 days. They had no idea how long they would be in this place. And so what do you do with yourself when you suddenly find yourself confined in a place you didn't expect to be in, without your usual tools of work? How do you create a sense of purpose? And what Josemaria and his followers did has just impressed me till today. They decided, okay, maybe we're trapped for now, but this will end. It has to end. It can't be indefinite. We won't become old men in this embassy. At some point, something will give, we'll be out of here, and the world will come back to normal. And when it comes back to normal, all those plans that we have held back right now will come into effect. They had just started this organization called Opus Dei, the work of God. And the idea was to show people that you can be an exceptionally good Christian, good person in the middle of the world, just doing your ordinary work. And I wanted to take this message everywhere in the world. At that point, it was just in Madrid. It was just there in Spain. But they had these dreams. We're going to go to Japan. We're going to go to the United States. We're going to go to Africa. But they didn't want to just wait until the war ended to continue those dreams. They said, let's live those dreams now. Let's start preparing now, because they believed it's going to happen. This war will end. We'll be out of here. Are we going to be ready when that moment comes? And so they came up with a timetable. So you can imagine, these are people trapped in an embassy somewhere in a civil war, no access to anything. And then they just start saying, okay, I'm studying Japanese, I'm studying German. And they just started educating themselves in all kinds of skills. And there were different kinds of people in there. There were engineers, architects, historians, lawyers. And then they set up a timetable. They said, from this time to this time, you will teach us something you know that we don't, maybe physics, maybe history. And they were just growing themselves. And I found that so inspiring, that being trapped somewhere with no resources, they used their creativity. So they used their minds to say, how do we create like encyclopedias out of here? Between let me see how many people are in that room, like 6 people in that room, in that picture. They said, okay, we know so much collectively between the 6 of us, so let's educate each other. You teach us something we don't know. Tomorrow I'll teach you something you don't know. And by the time we come out of here, we'll be very knowledgeable people, very diverse. We'll understand a lot of stuff outside our field. And we'll have prepared ourselves to conquer the world, because that's what they were determined to do. They were seriously determined to go to all those countries that they were dreaming of. And within 20 years from that time, call it actually 30 years, they had actually spread out to all those countries they were dreaming of. They were here in Kenya, they were in Japan, they were in the United States, they were in Portugal, they were in France. They had made it to those countries. So that for me was very inspirational. And then if you look at the next slide that I'm going to show you here, there's, so those are springs. You can see an uncompressed spring, and then you can see a solid spring, which has been compressed. So one of the analogies that St. Josemaria was giving them during that period was, right now, you're like a compressed spring. So you can't sort of like jump out, you know, that's what a spring does. It's compressed, and then at the right moment, it's released and it jumps out and it does whatever it is that a spring is supposed to do, to move something. It's supposed to get something done. So you feel like you're inactive, like you're tense right now because of the inactivity, but it's okay, because what's happening is you're now like a compressed spring. We're just compressing the spring. We're pushing it down. There's nothing you're going to do right now. You're just being pushed down like a compressed spring. You're being compressed. But at the moment when we'll be told all this waiting is over, you're going to be released and you'll come out with a lot of force. So you'll kind of just be unleashed. And that's what's happening to you right now. You are being compressed. But don't worry, that means when you're released, you're going to come out with a lot more force. And that was the first analogy that St. Josemaria used when they were trapped in that embassy. And the other analogy that he used is, he said that they were now growing on the inside. Now, what does that mean? I mean, how do you grow on the inside? When you see people growing, they're growing on the outside. They're getting taller or they're getting fatter. You know, there's something that's changing, that's visible. And that's the growth that we are familiar with when we see plants, when we see animals, and even ourselves in our younger days as we keep growing up, we can see the growth. It's external. So what did he mean by growing on the inside? Now, he was using analogies from Europe. We're here in Africa. We don't really have the kind of winters that they have in Europe. But in Europe, when the snow comes down, everything is covered. So obviously there's nothing that's going to grow above the snow. Besides, it's too cold. But there is a phenomenon where some plants keep growing down there, like they're growing on the inside where you can't see under the snow. And then when the snow comes out and everything's fine, this thing is going to be unleashed and it's going to come up again. So what he was telling them is, fine, maybe it's winter now. Maybe we are confined. Maybe we can't move. It seems like we can't do anything, but it's not true. We can actually grow, but we grow on the inside. We develop ourselves so that when we are now free to roam around, people will not recognize us. They'll just say, gosh, this person has really changed. You know, something has changed. And it's because you've actually grown. So most of you are probably in your 20s. There might be a few alumni here in the 30s. And just asking Eric to let some people in the waiting room. I see there are like 46 people in the waiting room. So let's please get them in if they're trapped in the waiting room. So here's this analogy Jose Maria is giving. You know, all of you guys are trapped in your houses. You can't get out. And you kind of look the way you look right now. And maybe a few weeks, maybe months from now, when you're released to the outer world, you might have changed a little bit. You might have put on a bit of weight, or if times are rough, you might have lost weight. I don't know what it's going to look like. But my guess is you look pretty much the same on the outside. But should it be the same on the inside? Is this an opportunity we're looking at where you could actually grow on the inside? You know, something can be changing. So by the time your friends meet you in a month's time, they notice this guy is different. Like, wow, you seem to be even smarter, wiser, more talented. Like, what happened? And what happened is you didn't waste your time in that time of confinement. You actually decided to grow on the inside, to kind of feed your inner self. At that time when everyone else is just relaxed and they are growing on the outside because they are overeating, they are not doing enough exercise, you are actually investing on your inner self. So you're growing on the inside. So those are the two analogies that I wanted to give you that inspired me so much about that time of confinement that Saint Jose Maria was facing. So now let's get into something that happened to me personally, where I experienced this whole thing of growing on the inside. And that's when I went to the United States. So I've lived here most of my life, but then I went to the US to do my PhD. And during those 6 years that I was living in New York, going to New Jersey to school, coming back to the city, a lot happened, like a lot of changes happened. So when I meet people after that, like when I came back, they said, wow, you know, you've really changed. Physically, I was the same. I looked exactly the same, but something shifted, you know, something changed. And I feel like I grew a lot when I was there. Why didn't that happen when I was still in Kenya? I'm not saying I wasn't growing when I was in Kenya. I was. I kept improving. I kept growing. And in fact, I thought I was doing really well until I reached New York and I got challenged. And precisely when you're challenged, those are the greatest opportunities for you to grow. When you get into a situation where you're facing things you've never faced before, new challenges that you've never faced before. And those are huge, huge opportunities to grow. So for instance, what sort of differences was I noticing? I mean, I thought, look, the US, I've seen it on Hollywood, I've read books. There'll be no culture shock. You know, I'll understand that place. Like there'll be nothing crazy for me there. And it's true, at first, I wasn't surprised about the infrastructure and things like that. I kind of expected that to happen. You know, I knew so much about the US before I went that I felt I wouldn't be surprised. So the stuff that started surprising me was the individuals, just meeting people who were so different from me. And the first shock was just meeting people on the street who, you know, everyone seemed to be talking about amazing things, like their life was amazing. They were doing these amazing things. They had an amazing future waiting for them. And I just couldn't understand how everyone except me could be so amazing. Like I started thinking, I mean, I'm actually doing a PhD. That's supposed to put me in a very tiny bracket of people. And yet over here, I'm just passing for an ordinary guy. It's like there's nothing special about me. And yet even the guys, the homeless guys on the streets are impressive in New York. So there's one guy I used to meet, he's called John Springs. And he used to just sleep on the street on 110th and Broadway. And he would sell books as well. And I would pass him on the way to the library. And I hit it off. We started talking. And I asked him one day, so John, like, why do you like books so much? He says, oh, Vince, I'm an author. I said, you are? He says, yeah, I've published 5 books. And then there I was shocked. You know, this guy on the street, begging on the street, is actually a 5-time author. And later on, I met his nephew, who told me, I know you know my uncle, John Spring, and you know he's an author. I said, yeah, sure, I know he wrote 5 books. He tells me, no, he wrote 15 books. He published 5. I'm sitting on the 10 manuscripts, trying to convince him to stop hanging out on the streets and come back and live the life of an author. So there you go, an amazing guy on the streets of New York. There's a day some guy rang the doorbell. It was snowing, and he said, I've noticed you guys haven't cleared your sidewalk. Do you want me to do it for you, just $10? And the whole thing was a bit surprising because this guy, first of all, he was a white guy. Then he looked like he was on drugs or something. And I told him, look, you don't even have a jacket. You're gonna freeze out there. You know, I need you to get a jacket. He said, I live up the street. Let me dash and get it. And then you prepare the shovels. So I gave him the shovels. He did the work. I paid him. And I was just intrigued by this guy because he said he lives up the street. I was living on a very good street, you know, Beaux-Arts style architecture. And I thought maybe he's in like the servants' quarters or something. You know, I was trying to imagine how this guy could actually be living there and trying to ask guys for money to shovel snow. So 2 days later, I bump into this guy. We're both coming out of the subway. This time he's actually well-dressed. He's got a jacket on. He's carrying a pile of books in one arm. So I tell him, hey, Robert, hi. And he's like, hey, Vince. Then I asked him, what are all those books? He said, take a look. So he passes them to me. And they're all poetry. And then I asked the guy, whoa, you like poetry? He said, I'm a poet. I write poetry. I write poems. In fact, here's my latest. And then he passes me a printout. He says, I've just come from the New York Public Library and I printed it over there. So he says, you can keep it. I've got it on soft, so it's okay. So I go home, I read it. I can't understand what the guy is saying. It's like, the title was Genesis Rewound. And it's an esoteric take on the first book of the Bible, kind of like interpreting it from a verbal, poetic level, you know, and putting it in verse. And then I decide to Google this guy, and I find out he's a PhD in literature from Brown, an Ivy League university. But go figure, he's out on the street, you know, shoveling snow. So I just started saying, how are these guys so talented? Like there's so many talented guys walking around. Even ordinary guys just seem to be talented and have huge plans. And so am I like thick? Am I stupid? I don't know if you guys saw this Flacco video last week where there's some guy, you know, speaking, him, of course, and then he's like not understanding what this guy is saying. And then at one point, he just goes like, labda mimi ni mjinga, you know, something like that. So that's the way I was feeling. Like everyone had big plans and I didn't. I didn't seem to be doing anything special. And then I started figuring either they are super bright and I'm not, or there's something they're doing that I'm not doing. And that effectively was what was happening. They grew up in an enabling environment where if you have a big idea, people actually encourage you. They tell you, go for it, man. You know, do it. They might even encourage you to drop out of school in order to take that idea to the skies. And that's what people like Bill Gates did to found Microsoft, or Sergey Brin, Google, all these guys, Zuckerberg and Facebook. They dropped out in order to chase after a big idea, because they were in an enabling environment where people tell you, go, 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 go. And so I started interacting with these guys. I would hang out with these entrepreneurs, and there's a guy from Google who comes and tells them, hey, I'm shopping for big ideas, like people with crazy ideas, radical ideas that could solve complex problems and change the world in radical ways. And Google has its own equivalent of a TED Talk that's called Solve for X. So if ever you have a really crazy idea, you can pitch it to them. And if they like it, they'll invite you to speak on a Solve for X platform. And then you tell the world about your crazy idea. And if you're even luckier, they might even fund it. And there you go, you start working on your crazy idea, radical solution to a complex problem. So this Google guy would keep coming and telling us, guys, give me your crazy ideas. I have a Solve for X competition coming up soon. And then he'd turn to me, Vince, where's your crazy idea? And I tell him, hey, Todd, I'm not a techie. I'm not an engineer. I'm just, I'm a student. I'm a PhD student studying these entrepreneurs. That's why I'm hanging around you guys, because I want to figure out why you do what you do and how you do it. But I'm not really a techie or engineer. He's like, crap, I want a big idea from you. Anyone can come up with a big idea. And I just, didn't believe him until one day I actually had a big idea. So I emailed it to him, and he says, it's an amazing idea, but it's not possible. It's just impossible. So I give up on it, but I only thought about it at breakfast, so it doesn't matter to me. Then 3 hours later, he writes back, he says, you're never gonna believe it, Vince. I just went to the Google office in New York, and they asked me, what are the crazy ideas you've had from guys lately? And I just decided to mention yours. And they were so excited. They were so excited. And they were asking me, how the heck is he ever gonna do that? And I told them it's impossible. I don't know. I don't think he can do it. And they said, if he does it, we're with him. We love that idea. So he told me, so look, what you're proposing is impossible, but Google loves it. So, hey, if you do figure out how to crack the limitations, Google would love to hear about it. Here are 2 articles in case you don't believe me, telling you that what you're trying to do is impossible. But if you crack the limitations in these 2 articles, and you do have what we call a moonshot, idea, let's send a person to the moon and bring them back. And I wasn't reading past the part of the email where he was saying Google is excited about your idea. I wasn't reading the impossible part. I was just reading the part of Google loves your idea. And now I got excited. And I read the 2 articles. 5 minutes later, I figured out a solution. I wrote to him, Todd, seems to me guys are using one of 2 pathways to solve this problem. What if I just reframed everything and created this 3rd pathway? What do you think now? And now he writes back, he's like, I can't believe it. You've cracked it. Enter the competition. Send your pitch deck. And he kept pushing me until I did. And out of about 100 entries, they picked 7 of us. And we were invited to speak about our crazy idea at Google. So they now call us Moonshot Pioneers. And it was all because of somebody believing in you and telling you, come on, anyone can innovate. I mean, what do you mean you have to be a genius, or you need to be, a techie, or come up with a bright idea? So it was just this thing of somebody believing in you and pushing you, I need you to send me an idea and don't give me any excuses. So that kind of opened me up. And that was just one of maybe 3 or 4 powerful experiences that I had in the US that basically gave me a window and told me, look, you've been given this gift, but you don't even realize you have the gift. I didn't realize I could innovate, that I could invent, that I could solve complex problems. Now I've gone further and I've come up with a formula for how to solve complex problems. I call it the innovation algorithm. And I teach people how to solve complex problems, all of which I could do, but I had no idea that I could. because I hadn't been told about it. So basically, you all have gifts, but no one's told you that, look, you have it. And maybe you've not stopped to examine yourself and say, what could I possibly do if I was at my maximum, doing everything that God created me to do. And you find that when you start entertaining that possibility, that you are created to do some amazing stuff, then now you begin to walk that path. So right now that you're trapped in this, COVID business, and you're at home and you're thinking, man, what a bummer, there's nothing I can do. Now is the time for you to ask yourself, how can I grow on the inside? How can I? So just a minute. I need to just been given a message here. I need to make somebody the host. Okay, great. Okay, beautiful. So here you are. You feel you're trapped. You feel your life has been disrupted and you're not in control. It wasn't your choice. You've just been pushed into this situation that is not of your making, and you can't wait until it's over. Well, here's the thing. This could be your chance to grow on the inside. So first you need to identify what are your talents. What are the different things that you could become extremely good at if you discovered that those are your talents. Those are the things that you could become good at. That's what I call step one, just finding yourself. And normally you don't do it because you don't have time to think. People are rushing you around, giving you deadlines, submit this assignment, do this task, deadlines coming up. There's no time to think. You're actually like a slave. You're just following what other people are asking you to do. You have no time to even look at yourself, to strategically ask yourself, where do I want to go with my life? You don't have the time to do it. But the good news is, hey, now you have the time. Now you can actually afford to stop and think and ask yourself, what could I potentially be good at? Is my life just doing this one job that I'm doing right now, like a robot just fulfilling the orders that I'm given by other people? I'm a cog in a wheel. I just turn where I'm made to turn. Is that it? Is that what the rest of my life is going to be like? When am I going to take charge? When will I be in control? When will I guide myself places? When will I, go for the big time? I mean, when is that ever gonna start? You normally don't have time to think about that. So I think your step one is to just stop and reflect. Look on the inside. For you to grow on the inside, you first have to look inwards. You just say, too much noise outside, too much noise, let's cut it out. Let's focus inwardly. Let's look inwardly. What's going on over there? This is my chance to take stock of how my life has been so far. And am I happy with what's happening with my life right now? Is this the direction I always wanted it to take? Are there some horizons I've never even thought of? But all that will happen if you do that first step of looking inwards and asking yourself the tough questions. Do I even know who I am and what I am capable of and what my purpose is in life? And if you do find that purpose, to your surprise, you'll find that you're equipped to do it. So if, for instance, you feel yourself drawn to solve complex problems, you want to solve huge issues, but everyone in Kenya is telling you, who do you think you are to even be talking of solving big problems in society? You're nobody. But you have this inner urge to solve big problems. Then maybe you have a calling. Maybe you have an inner voice telling you you are built, you are designed to actually solve those problems. You just haven't started yet because you haven't accepted the mission. You haven't accepted the challenge. This is the language a lot of people use nowadays. They'll reach out to you and they'll say, I challenge you for the next 10 days to do this and that. And then you hear people saying, challenge accepted. So maybe you're at that stage in your life where you haven't even heard the challenge. Or if you've heard it, you don't believe, like you're seriously asking me to be the one providing the solution to these problems in my country. Like, no, that's crazy. Like, no. So you've not accepted the challenge. But if you went to a country where people are constantly talking about big things and they're familiar with people talking about big things, and they don't keep putting you down and saying, of course you can't do it, like you're nobody. You know, they keep telling you, go for it, man. You know, live the dream, you know, do it. So maybe you're at that stage, you haven't accepted the challenge. Now, the minute you accept the challenge, you'll be shocked that you have the tools. So you're wondering, like, how am I ever gonna do it? Suddenly, all kinds of resources start coming your way, like just like that. You just randomly bump into people. They're like, hey, I hear you're trying to do, I don't know what, for teenagers in the slums, or you're trying to solve something for farmers in the rural areas, or you're trying to come up with the next big thing in tech that's going to solve, I don't know which healthcare problem. And most people around you think you're crazy, but you find a few guys who are like, go for it, go for it. And the minute you accept the challenge and you even declare it, like, guys, I'm trying to solve this problem. I'm trying to come up with a cure for corona, or I'm trying to come up with a protocol that prevents the spreading of corona, whatever it is, or I'm trying to find a formula to help businesses bounce back after corona, or I'm trying to come up with a formula to make guys thrive during corona, whatever it is. Once you declare it, people start reading stuff and saying, hey, have you seen this article? There's a guy just like you, but in Costa Rica. Maybe you guys need to talk. And then you talk, you hit it off, you've got a partner, things start moving. So that's kind of how it works. You suddenly find you're equipped to do the stuff that you were asked to do, that you were given a mission or challenge to do. And the other shock you'll find is that some of those resources are inside of you. You have the talent. You just never believed in yourself. You didn't give that talent a chance. And you just didn't know you had the equipment. It's just waiting to be polished, to be used, to be gotten into fighting shape. And that's all you ever needed to do, to accept a serious challenge, which then forces you to be really, really good, to be able to match that challenge. And then now you can do it because you've accepted a big challenge. So yesterday I was with a friend of mine from the World Bank, and he likes running. He's my running buddy. And he has become really good in the past 2 years. He's been practicing a lot. And during COVID, he's gone to, I just asked him point blank yesterday, Eliud, this is not the Eliud Kipchoge, but it's Eliud Chamweno. And he says, I asked him, what sort of mileage are you doing per week? And he said 100. He's doing 100 kilometers a week. So now I understand the guy. I mean, there's a day I knew he had done 21 the previous day, and I was going to run the next day, but I didn't invite him because I thought there's no chance he'll go running back to back. Then he calls me in the afternoon like, hey, Vince, I went for a short run this morning and I want to go for a long run this afternoon. You want to come with me? I thought he was nuts because he had done a half marathon the previous day, then apparently did 10K in the morning, and he wanted to now do like 18K with me, like crazy. But the minute he decided his target was 100 kilometers a week, suddenly these things that us guys find challenging, like running back to back 2 days in a row, that's nothing. He can run 2 times in a day. I mean, he does 100. And when I told him how impressed I was at the 100 he's doing, he told me there's this Korean guy in Swaras, Urban Swaras, who has been doing 400 kilometers a week. This is here in Nairobi. I mean, how the heck do these guys do this stuff? It's because of set yourself incredible challenges. You just start finding resources everywhere. So yesterday he took me to a place where I could buy gear for running. So, you know, I got something for energy drinks. If you're doing anything post 15 kilometers, you probably need to top up on energy. So now I have that. We got a GPS watch because I didn't have one. I was just so basic. I was running without tracking what I'm doing. But these guys are serious and they equip themselves. And then suddenly, once you accept a big challenge, things just start coming your way. People start offering you resources. Even during COVID, you have to run with a mask. I tried one last week. It's difficult. It's like high altitude training. And the guy showed me a mask at Decathlon, and goes for 700 bob, and it's perfect for running. You don't feel anything, and you comply with the regulations. So resources start coming your way once you set yourself a big challenge. So remember that step one. Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing on planet Earth, both during and after COVID? Once you take on a big challenge, it now behooves you to become that good. Like, what would it take to become effective and perform at that level, to solve the kind of problems I was born to solve? Suddenly now you have to become good at math, or you have to be an athlete, or you have to be a public speaker, or you have to be an exceptionally good writer, or whatever it is that people who solve the kind of problems you were born to solve need to have as part of their toolkit. So suddenly you realize, gosh, if I'm going to operate at that level, then I need to start practicing. I need to equip myself. So what is it that stands in your way? And then start working on it. And now is the best time, because there's nobody harassing you with too many deadlines. So you can actually invest in yourself. There are all these free courses. I'm sure you've seen them on WhatsApp. There was this one of Harvard offering like 70 courses for free. So you can take them, check those courses. What are they? Is it something I'd be interested in? What are the gaps in your knowledge? Are you a cultured person? Could you actually just hang out with the high and mighty and you feel like you're at home? Why? Because you know the stuff they're talking about. If they start talking politics, oh yeah, sure. You understand the different political systems, geopolitics, and how it works because you've taken time to study it. Or if it's history, you know world history, you know all the major events that were major turning points, and now you're getting ready for the next major turning point, which I think is going to happen in the next 1 or 2 months. We're living it. This is going to be a major turning point in history. This is the point where digitalization stopped being a pipe dream for everyone and it became a reality for most people. And you're living it. But are you ready for it? Do you understand history and turning points and stuff like that? So this is your time to equip yourself and to tell yourself, okay, how do I acquire those skills? So you first identify your mission, like what it is you want to do with your life. Then you ask yourself, for me to be one of the best in it, what skills do I need? So it means you look at your talents and you turn them into skill. You look for activities that will help you turn them into skill. Some of them are activities on the internet that you can, do in a MOOC, a massive open online course. Some are stuff that you can read. Some are stuff you can practice in your house, outside your house. Whatever it is, it could be singing, it could be playing a musical instrument, it could be learning a foreign language, it could be learning how to use sign language. I mean, you name it. There's so many interesting things a person could do in the world, but you just equip yourself, you grow on the inside, you just start working on it, slowly. And in a month or two's time, when your friends see you again, you'll be a totally different person. They'll just say, you look the same outwardly, but gosh, like the sort of stuff you talk about and which you're actually doing are at a totally different level. So that is something that you need to think about. So I could go on and on, but I wanted to just trigger your thinking and get you to realize that this period that you're experiencing is actually, it's a godsend. Don't look at it as a tragedy. The world is divided into two people. People, who see themselves as victims, will only succeed when the situation is right. And then you have other people who are they're sort of like go-getters. They see themselves as agents. I'm not a subject. I'm not an object that is being tossed around by the situation. I'm a subject. I'm an agent, someone who can actually go and do stuff. So what happens to me is a consequence of what I do, not what other people did to me or what happened in the world. So why is it, for instance, that some businesses are failing now? but others are thriving. I mean, look at the platform we're on, Zoom. I mean, those guys are on a roll. And it's just because of this opportunity that they looked at. So for them, this is not a disaster. This is a God-sent opportunity. So for you as well, try and turn it around and say, gosh, this is a God-sent opportunity. Apart from people dying and businesses going down, I personally see that this period of confinement has been of tremendous benefit to me personally. I wasn't, I mean, like fitness, I was just running 20 minutes a week, just in order to ease my conscience that I did some exercise. So every Sunday I'd be fighting with myself, you've got to run. I'm like, no, I'm busy, can't. Then it reaches 5 o'clock, I haven't gone. 6 o'clock, I haven't gone. 6:15, I'm like, it's gonna get dark, just go and do something. So I get out of the house, I go run around the fields a few times. And then after 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I say, okay, that's it, I've done my exercise. And I do that every 2 weeks. Not every week, every 2 weeks. So I was in bad shape. Right now, I'm running 3 times a week, and I'm doing distances between 10 and 15. And from next week, I'll probably up it now to 20, 25. And I couldn't have dreamt of doing that in the pre-COVID times, couldn't do it. And I'm spending time with people at home. Didn't have time to do that. Walking around the neighborhood, getting to greet neighbors and, social distance, but we're greeting each other, we're knowing each other. There's some street kids that I'm mentoring. I started doing this 2 weeks ago. You might have seen it on my latest Facebook post. And they've just started a company and they're running it. So every now and then they call me, there's a client who's called us, what do we do, what do we say? And it's all exciting stuff. I couldn't do this like in the non-COVID time. I'd be too busy to pick their calls. But now they keep calling me. Kuna msee mmoja ametupigia kutoka South B, anataka tukam, sijui tufanye nini. I'm like, sawa, fanyeni hivi na hivi. But they tell me kuna msee mmoja anasema tutume CV. CV ni nini? Hiyo sani tutadu vipi? Then I explain to them. So I'm actually, getting time to do stuff I couldn't do in non-COVID times. So I'm actually not complaining. I'm learning a lot. I'm improving a lot in things that I didn't have time to improve in. So I'm challenging you as well. This is an opportunity. Don't think of it as a tragedy. It's really just a question of your imagination. Can you imagine the same thing that you're looking at as a tragedy as an opportunity? An opportunity for what? And then you ask yourself, for me to get all that stuff done, how good do I need to be and in what? And then you ask yourself, how can I become that good in those things that I need to be good at? What are the strategies? Is it, like I said, a MOOC? Is it reaching out to someone who can mentor me? Is it certain activities I need to engage in? Is it a forum I need to join and just listen to that vibe? And so for me, the running group, that has helped me a lot. So I wasn't active in the group, but now suddenly, it's really helping me being in that, help push you to improve. So I think I'm going to open it up to questions now. And Eric is going to moderate the session. So Eric, handing over to you, and we can start answering the questions.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for that insightful talk. I have a number of questions here, and I'll start with a question from John Mwangi. He says, what advice would you give to someone who studies best in a structured setting, school setup, now that we are at home and tend to be idle and no inbuilt morale to pick up my school book?
That's an excellent question, John. In fact, I'm seeing an opportunity for you right here, which is how to learn differently, how to teach yourself to learn in an unstructured environment. Because if you look at all the reports that have been prepared in the past 5 years on the future of work, like what will the world be like in the next few years, they always point out that there are certain characteristics that people who are successful in the future world will need to have. And one of those is precisely the ability to learn and the ability to teach yourself, So self-learning, teaching yourself, that is going to be one of the skills of the future. So just mentioning a few of the skills of the future, creativity is another one, which again goes against being too structured. Because in order for you to create, you have to break structures. You have to kind of shake things up and reimagine the way things are and create new possibilities. And all of that points towards being flexible and being unstructured and being creative. So when were you ever going to be prepared for the world of the future? Maybe you were hanging on to this structure that was helping you until the structure got disrupted and now you're feeling helpless. But you're being given a lifeline here. You've been given a timeout. So it's not like from now on everything has changed. No, you've been given a timeout. But when you come back from that timeout, you should have acquired a few useful skills, like how to be flexible and how to teach yourself. And there are videos on the internet that can help you with that. So depending on what kind of a learner you are, whether logical, so you'd rather read an article, or maybe you're visual, you'd rather listen to a podcast or watch a video, you'll find interesting stuff on how to teach yourself. So you're not in a school, there's no teacher, there's no lecturer, there are no course books. How do you still arrive at the same destination and equip yourself? You can also teach yourself how to learn fast. And this is a skill that I really love. And there's a course that I give the MBA students. So every year they invite me for a session that we call, it's a very interesting title. We call it Ninja Survival Techniques for the Modern Busy Student. Because we realize they're all working, and many of you are in that situation. You're working, you're busy, you've got a family, and maybe you decide to study as well. How the heck are you going to hack it, to crack that, because you've got a full-time job? It's by learning the shortcuts. How do you learn fast? What does it mean to learn? What does it mean to know something? So these are things like high-speed reading, knowing how your brain works so that you feed it with the kind of material that's perfectly designed for your learning style, because we're all different. And once you appreciate it, you can learn even faster. Whereas in a structured environment, they assume everyone's going to use the same textbook and same materials. But in this unstructured environment, you might actually do better than you did before, because finally you can now choose material that suits your learning style, because you learn what learning style is and how it works and what yours is and which material to look for. And so I think for you, it's a godsend. This is your opportunity to learn how to learn how to be unstructured and how to be flexible. And it'll prepare you for the jobs of the future. Next question, Eric.
So we have two questions that talk on around fear. And so what will you comment about overcoming procrastination or fear of failure that often overwhelms and turns great ideas to just mere thoughts? Two questions around that.
Okay, so in terms of procrastination, guys, I'll just be honest, I'm bad at it myself. Like, I'm a procrastinator, so I'd be a hypocrite trying to give you advice on how not to procrastinate. But what I've noticed is if I'm excited about something, I'm not going to procrastinate. Like, those are the things that get done. So maybe if I was to try and cure myself, part of making something become top of your agenda is creating an emotional connection with it. Like, what would it take for me to do this thing? It would have to seem to be important to me. So one trick that I've used when I'm bored and I still have to do that thing is I ask myself, what's the interesting side to this? Like, I'm big on impact. Like, who will it help? How does it help anybody? How does it make the world a better place? The minute I see how it does that, I now get excited about it and it starts moving up in my agenda. Suddenly I want to do it because I see how interesting it is and I see how far it can go. And now I won't procrastinate because I'm excited about it. So for me, what I've noticed is I tend to go where I'm excited, or actually where I'm afraid. There's this deadline, it's coming and it's on top of me and it's tomorrow. So now I have to do it. So procrastinators react to emergencies. So if you create some sort of emergency, create an emergency emotional connection with whatever it is you have to do, maybe that'll work. I don't know how to do that, but I definitely know how to make something interesting when it's not. I just reimagine it. And this is, again, one of the skills you should coach yourself to do. Don't accept things at face value. Like, this is what it is. This is a bad thing. Just stop for a minute and say, could it be a good thing? Can I imagine a world in which this is actually a useful thing? In which, in fact, this is not a tragedy. It's actually a boon. It's like a blessing. Can I imagine, can I turn things around and make them have that characteristic? And suddenly you're interested and you stop procrastinating. Now, about fear of failure, here's what I'll tell you. You see, failure is like it's a learning opportunity. So how the heck will you become really good at something without trying? You have to try. You have to try, fall down, several times. And every time you fall, you debrief. You ask yourself, okay, why did I fall? Why didn't I succeed and I actually expected to? What did I do wrong? Debrief, ask for feedback, learn, and then ask for another opportunity. Don't give up and say, oh no, I'm useless in this. There's a video I love watching. It's of a lady called Helene Cornell, and it's something called the Passion Project. And she's somebody who was sponsored, I think, by MasterCard to just do her passion project. So she makes bubbles, which are like these caravans. She turns them into houses. So she has these two videos. One is on turning caravans into like a hotel. She has two in her garden. And her latest project, she was taking an abandoned bus and turning it into a hotel. And she's just amazing at what she does with her hands, turning trash into treasure. So that's, she's part of the Passion Project. So if you search for Helene, Helene Cornell, the Passion Project on YouTube, you'll see her videos. And in the one where she's taking a soup can and turning it into a flower vase, she says, my mom used to tell me, don't ever give up on yourself until you've tried something at least 10 times. And then she smiles. So, as she's cutting the paper and sticking it, and she says, it might not come out straight the first time. Don't give up on yourself. It took some practice for me to become this good. And my mom always said, never give up until you've tried something at least 10 times. So before you write yourself off and say, I'm not even talented in this, just keep trying. Maybe on the 8th attempt, 9th attempt, you start seeing progress. And then suddenly you hit this curve and it's now like exponential growth. And that's what used to happen with me when I'm learning a language. So there's this first period when it's difficult, it's tough, you keep falling down. When I learned Spanish, I started, I think, like 9 times. I kept stopping, giving up, then coming back, going all the way back to chapter 1 because I'd forgotten everything. So I went from chapter 1 to chapter 9 about 9 times. Then on the 9th time, I survived. And then I just went to chapter 10, yippee, chapter 11, 12. I reached 20, 25. I could speak Spanish. So that's how it worked. So don't give up on yourself too quickly. Think of every failure as a learning opportunity. And then when you learn, you go for the next one with the lessons you had from the previous one. And so suddenly for you, it won't be a failure. It's practice. Every time you hit the ground, it's like, oh, opportunity to learn something else. Why did I hit the ground? And you'll hit the ground less hard and less hard and less hard until you reach a new level. And then you'll plateau at that level. To go to the next level, you have to take in some pain, which means you have to start falling again because you're trying to go for a higher target. You're trying to jump to a higher level. Of course, it'll take more effort. Of course, you'll fail, but you keep picking yourself up. So if you reframe the definition of failure and call it training, then suddenly the fear goes. It's like, let's go for training. It's not like, oh, will I succeed or fail? You're looking at it as if this is the ultimate test. It's not. It's training. This isn't the game. Just think of it as training. This is training, this is training, this is training. And then at some point you can say, okay, game time. I'm now approaching a client and I'm making promises and I have to deliver. Now I can fail or succeed. But even if you do fail, then call it extra practice. And this is what happens when you fail in an actual competitive match. You debrief with the coach, where did we go wrong? And you learn, and then the next game you're better. So I think that's how I would overcome fear. Just think of it as training. Next question, Eric.
As we are running out of time, we'll take the last questions, and then the remaining questions we will pass them to you. You will answer them, and in an email together with the recording, we'll share it out with the participant. So
Okay.
the last question, what are the key factors that will enable formation of sustainable habits towards self-development? And this is linked to a question somebody asked about sharing books you can recommend that help towards this.
Okay. So what are the habits that will help you towards self-development? So first of all, you need to have clear goals. So if you're all over the place, then that's unrealistic. So you need to have clear goals, not too many, just have a few, I'd say 2-3 major things you want to improve in during these COVID times. And then you need to obviously educate yourself. So it's not just a question of, because you've decided you want to be better, it's going to happen. Almost like psych, let's psych up, let's do this. That alone won't get you. You need direction. So first you need the goal. Like, what's the target? What's the vision? What do you see yourself becoming? And then you need direction, like guidance. Learn from other people, build on the shoulders of giants. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. So who else has walked this journey? Can I read how they did it? Like, how did they get from 0 to 5 to 7 to 10? How did they do that? And that's the part where, in fact, the other question of books, that's great. So get resources and educate yourself so that you get a sense of direction and you have good advice, So the advice could be from just reading and watching videos, or by reaching out to a mentor who can walk you through the paces. So that's like a third thing that you should do. Let me get somebody to mentor me and to be also an accountability partner. Sometimes you're lucky you get both in the same person. So a mentor who will also allow you to check in with them and say how you're doing. Or sometimes they're too busy. They'll say, I'll just meet you once every 3 months. That's all the time I can spare, and I'll give you advice. Now you need to sustain that. But to sustain it, you definitely need an accountability partner. So that doesn't need to be an expert. It's just somebody you've made a promise to, who will hold you to the promise. Somebody who sees you often, somebody who observes you and can tell whether you're actually doing it or not. So maybe someone you've said, I'm gonna be waking up at a certain time. It should be somebody who will know that you did wake up or you didn't, and who will sort of knock on your door and say, hey, I thought you said you're waking up at 6 every day from now on. Like, what's this? It's now 7 p.m. So you need an accountability partner who will help you to do it. And then if you can have someone who's like a journeying partner, someone who's taking on that struggle with you. So I said, on my own, left to my own devices, my idea of exercising every week was just falling to the ground. And so I'd end up running every 2 weeks for 20 to 30 minutes. But now that I'm in this running group, then I just get challenged, because guys are like, hey, do you want to go running tomorrow? And it's pretty hard to just say no. So I'll say, okay, what time? We agree on the time. Now I can't give myself excuses, because it's not just me. I'm going with somebody else. So I'll have to do it. And so for the past 3 weeks, I've been running with these different running partners, and I've really improved like a lot in the past 3 weeks. I've upped my mileage, my speed is coming up, and I'm no longer actually afraid. So if someone tells me, let's go for a 15K run, I'm not like, oh, wow, that's a long distance. Right now I'm planning from next week, I'll be doing 20s. Maybe I'll get to 25 in another 3 weeks, 30. It's no longer like daunting, but that's because you have people you're doing it with, and then they encourage you and you see improvement. So try and get those things done. Have like a clear goal, like what is it you want to improve in? And then get direction, like how does one do it? What's the best advice I can get? Get a mentor if you can, If you can't, at least get an accountability partner. Either way, you'll need an accountability partner. If the mentor does both, fantastic. If the mentor doesn't, then you need to get a mentor and an accountability partner. And then lastly, if you get people who are journeying with you, people interested in developing the same skills, a network. You join a WhatsApp group of people who just discuss that stuff and post what they've done, and you have to do the same, and it challenges you. So that'll kind of force you to do it. So that's the advice that I would give. Then in terms of books, I think if you look for this book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, I think that would get you started on that very, very first building block that I told you. If you have a sense of purpose, of meaning, like my life, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is what my mission is. That's where it all starts. Because for you to fulfill such a bold mission, you have to be exceptionally good. You have to be very skilled. You have to turn your talents into skill. Now you have a reason for doing it because you're so ambitious. You have this big goal. So that book will help you to see that we all should find a meaning in life. We all should find a sense of purpose, because the bigger it is, the higher the stakes, the greater the demands on you to become really good, world-class. And now you're playing in a different league. So that's the book that I would advise you to read. So it's been great being with you guys. And someone's suggested Deep Work by Cal Newport. That's also an excellent book that will help you find meaning, especially if you're trying to find meaning through your work. So look for that book. It's called Deep Work by someone called Newport. Cal, C-A-L, Newport. All right, over to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogutu, for that presentation and answering our questions. There are a couple more questions that people asked. I will send them to you by email. You can draft a response, and then we will share back with the participants as we send a recording of this session. I would like to ask everyone who participated to send the email addresses on this chat box so that we can have it when we need to send you the material. Finally, we want to ask all the participants, you can suggest to us topics you like discussed in such seminars, in such webinars. We are going to have an event, at least one event every week. So you can suggest a topic, you can suggest a speaker if you have somebody in mind, and then we will schedule and inform you in good time of these sessions. Thank you very much for taking time to be here. We have gone 12 minutes past the allocated time, but this is the first of many, and we hope to have Dr. Ogutu again at another time to discuss other topics that he's researching on and is very keen on. Thank you everyone, and do have a good afternoon and a good weekend in a couple of days.
Bye guys, all the best.